Okay, so, you think about NBA players, you probably picture like these incredible athletes, right? Like almost superhuman.
Hmm.
And uh and you gotta admit their size too. I mean, it's a league where these guys are just constantly like soaring above the rim. But it always kind of makes me wonder, what about when you have that same crazy talent, but in a smaller package?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I mean, in a sport that's so much about, physical dominance, it's
Hmm.
really cool to see how skill and just pure determination can let these guys carve out a place for themselves, even when they might be overlooked at first, You
Yeah.
could almost call it the classic underdog story, but played out at the highest level of basketball.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's that whole David and Goliath thing,
Oh,
right?
great.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're talking about the history of the shortest players in the NBA and how the game looks today for these shorter guys. We got some really cool info about these legendary players who just blew past everyone's expectations, and also some of the current players who are doing the same thing right now. And it really gets you thinking about, what really defines success on the court, right? Not just height.
Right. And today we're going to go all the way back to the beginning and learn about the pioneers, the guys who were the first to prove that you don't have to be super tall to make a big impact. Then we'll move on to the shortest player who's dominating the league right now. And then we'll also take a look at how the whole height thing has changed over the years. Hopefully by the end, you'll have a whole new perspective on this fascinating part of the game.
So let's get right to it. Let's talk about the Giants, or well, maybe not so Giants, who really led the way for shorter players. I think when anyone thinks about the shortest NBA players ever, one name instantly pops up: Tyrone Muggsy Bogues.
Yeah. Muggsy Bogues is definitely the first guy you think of at just 5 feet 3 inches or about 1.60 meters tall. He's officially the shortest player in NBA history. But honestly, what's even more amazing is how long his career was and the impact he had on the game. He played for 14 seasons. That's from 1987 to 2001. Think about how physical the NBA is, how demanding it is on your body, even if you're tall. So for him to play that long is insane.
Absolutely. And it's not like he was just a feel-good story on the bench. Bogues was a crucial part of his teams. He was even a full-time starter a lot of the time. Can you imagine being a point guard running the offense and going up against guys who are like a foot or even 2 feet taller than you? And not just surviving out there, but actually being awesome. His ball handling must have been insane, like magic. And his passing, super precise. And on defense, I mean, he had to be just relentless to make up for the height difference.
Yeah, you got it. That low center of gravity wasn't actually a bad thing for him. It turned into a huge advantage. He was really hard to post up against because he was so low to the ground, and his quickness and agility with the ball were off the charts. He could sneak into passing lanes that taller players just couldn't reach. Plus, you can't forget about those iconic pictures of him with his teammate Mehmet Bol from the Washington Bullets.
Hmm.
Bol was 7'7" or about 2.31 meters tall. Just seeing those two guys standing next to each other really showed how diverse the league was when it came to players' physiques.
That's a picture that'll stick with you forever. So we talked about Muggsy, but there was another guy who was just a little taller than him, Earl Boykins. He was listed at 5 feet 5 inches, or about 1.65 meters. And Earl, he had a really long and successful career too.
For sure. He played for 13 seasons, which really shows how tough and skilled he was. I think what really made Boykins stand out was that he could score a ton of points, which was surprising for someone his size. He wasn't just passing the ball, he was actually a scoring threat. He even had one season where he averaged almost 15 points a game. To be that small and still be a consistent scorer at that level says a lot about his talent, how fearless he was driving to the basket, and just how good his shooting was.
It really proves that you can't measure heart and determination right. And then there's another guy who always puts a smile on my face, Anthony Spud Webb. He was 5 feet 6 inches, or roughly 1.68 meters tall. Spud was in the league for 12 seasons, and he's a legend because of one super memorable moment.
Oh, you mean the 1986 slam dunk contest when he went head-to-head with his own teammate Dominique Wilkins from the Atlanta Hawks? Yeah, Wilkins was like a human highlight reel known for his amazing dunks, and I heard he didn't even know Spud could dunk like that. For Webb to not only compete but actually win and throw down these crazy athletic creative dunks, it was totally shocking and so inspiring. It's the perfect example of exceeding everyone's expectations. And even beyond that legendary moment, he was still a really good player, averaging about 10 points a game over his career.
That dunk contest was pure magic. It's like the ultimate underdog story happening right in front of the whole world. And there was another player who was also 5 feet 6 inches, Mel Hirsch. He played for the Boston Celtics way back in the early days of the NBA.
That's right. Hirsch was around during the 1946-1947 season. He didn't play for very long, just 13 games, but he did hold a pretty important record. For almost 40 years, he was the shortest player in NBA history until Muggsy Bogues came along. It just goes to show that even being 5'6" was seen as super short back in the early days of the league.
You can really see how the game and the players have changed over the years. Then there's a whole group of guys who are all 5 feet 7 inches tall, which is about 1.70 meters. We're talking about Greg Grant, Keith Jennings, Red Klotz, Wat Misaka, and Montetu. What a bunch of talented boys.
Yeah, for sure.
And each one of them has their own amazing story. Greg Grant was known for his crazy energy and how skilled he was. Keith Jennings got a reputation for playing way bigger than he was, always making big plays even though he was small. And Red Klotz is unique because he was the shortest player to ever win an NBA championship, and he also had a super long and interesting career coaching the Washington Generals. You mean the team that always played against the Harlem Globetrotters? That's a fun fact. And Wat Misaka's story is just so important. He broke the color barrier in the NBA. What he did goes way beyond his height. He was a true trailblazer.
Totally agree. What Misaka did for the sport was huge. And then you've got Montetu. People always saw him as the underdog, but he became such a valuable player for North Carolina State. He even played a big part in their national championship win. His story shows how important things like hard determination and being a good teammate are no matter how tall you are.
So true. Okay, so just to recap, we've got Muggsy Bogues at 5'3", 1.60 meter. Earl Boykins at 5'5", 1.65 meter. Spud Webb and Mel Hirsch both at 5'6",
Yeah.
1.68 meters. And then that group of guys at 5'7", 1.70 meters. Greg Grant, Keith Jennings, Red Klotz, Wat Misaka, and Montetu. They're all so inspiring. They proved everyone wrong and left their mark on the game.
Totally. Their careers are such powerful examples of how skill, never giving up, and believing in yourself can help you overcome any limitations people might think you have.
All right, so let's fast forward to the current NBA season, 2024-2025. Who's carrying the torch now as the shortest player in the league?
Right now, that title goes to Yuki Kawamura of the Memphis Grizzlies. He's 5 feet 8 inches tall, which is about 1.73 meters. And get this, he's actually the only player in the NBA right now who's listed as being under 6 feet tall.
Wow. That really shows how much taller the average NBA player has gotten over time, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So tell me more about how Kawamura got to the NBA.
Oh, yeah. His story's pretty interesting. He had a lot of success in the Japanese B-League, and then in 2023, he had a breakout season and won both the league's MVP and Rookie of the Year awards. That just shows how talented he is and how much of an impact he had on the court. He also played in the NBA G League Next Up game in 2025, which gave fans in the U.S. a chance to see what he could do.
So he's clearly got the skills to play at a high level. What kind of challenges does he face being the shortest guy out there?
Well, being that short in the NBA is a big deal. Rebounding is a lot harder. It takes some serious speed and creativity to shoot over taller defenders, and guarding bigger guards or even smaller forwards can be really tough physically. But just like the shorter players who came before him, Kawamura probably uses his incredible quickness, his agility, his awesome ball handling skills, and his high basketball IQ to make up for it. And he's said that he really looked up to Yuki Togashi, another great Japanese player who was also shorter, around 5'6" or 1.68 meters. So he's got examples of success to learn from.
Having role models like that can make a big difference.
Yeah.
So after Kawamura, it seems like there's a pretty big jump up in height before you get to the next group of shorter NBA players, right?
Yeah, that's right. There are 8 players who are all listed at 6 feet tall, which is about 1.83 meters. This group includes some really well-known and talented players like Davion Mitchell from the Sacramento Kings, Fred VanVleet and Aaron Holiday from the Houston Rockets, Jordan McLaughlin and Mike Conley from the Minnesota Timberwolves, Jose Alvarado from the New Orleans Pelicans, Chris Paul from the San Antonio Spurs, and Kyle Lowry from the Philadelphia 76ers.
So while 6 feet is still shorter than average for the NBA today, it's way more common than Kawamura's 5'8". It really shows how unique his height is in the league right now.
Absolutely. And if you check the official NBA.com roster, it's clear that those guys are the shortest active players and that Kawamura is the only one under 6 feet.
Okay, so we talked about the shortest players in history and then the shortest players in the league today. Now let's think about that height gap. You mentioned there's a 5-inch difference between Muggsy Bogues and Yuki Kawamura. What does that tell us about how the NBA has changed?
You know, that 5-inch difference, which is about 12.7 centimeters, might not sound like a lot in everyday life, but in professional basketball, where everyone's so good it's actually huge, it could mean a few things. Maybe the game has evolved in a way that makes it super important to have a certain level of size to be successful at the highest level. Like maybe with all the switching on defense nowadays, it would be way harder for someone as short as Bogues to guard all those different positions. Or maybe scouts are a little biased towards taller players now, even if their skills are similar. It's possible that height has become a slightly bigger factor in their decisions.
That makes a lot of sense. The game is definitely more physical and faster now than it was when Bogues was playing. And what about the difference between Bogues and those 6-foot players in the league today?
Well, that difference is even bigger. Muggsy Bogues at 5'3", 1.60 meters, is a whole 9 inches shorter than those guys. That's like 22.9 centimeters. It really shows how incredibly short he was, even compared to the players who were considered short in today's NBA. I mean, obviously, Kawamura is the exception here. But thinking about how Bogues played for 14 seasons and was
Wow.
a starter for a lot of that time, it just makes his story even more unbelievable. It really proves how talented and determined he was.
It's almost impossible to imagine how skilled and mentally tough he had to be to not just play in the NBA, but actually be great, even though he was giving up so much size to his opponents.
Exactly. And it goes back to that main idea we've been talking about. Being tall definitely helps in basketball, but it's not the only thing that matters. Skill, basketball IQ, court vision, and a never give up attitude are all super important, and they can help players overcome being shorter than everyone else.
So let's wrap up our deep dive here. Muggsy Bogues is still the shortest player in NBA history, and Yuki Kawamura is the shortest player in the league right now. And there's definitely a noticeable height difference between them. But the most important takeaway is how talented and determined all these players are, both the legends from the past and the guys playing today. It's truly inspiring to see them achieve so much in a sport that's so often dominated by really tall players.
That sums it up perfectly. These players, both the ones who made history and the ones who are making their mark now, are proof that skill, resilience, and believing in yourself can help you beat any expectations that people might have because of your height. They show us that passion and talent can help you overcome almost anything.
I totally agree. They're an inspiration to everyone. So you think about the stories of these amazing athletes. Think about the special skills and strategies they had to develop to not just play in the NBA, but to actually thrive against much bigger players. What can we learn from their resilience and how they adapted to succeed? Maybe you can go and do some more research on these players and learn about how they played the game. You might be surprised by how clever and brilliant they were and still are on the basketball court.